Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at the 2024 presidential election, this time in the state of North Carolina. This is the third episode of the series looking at each state individually, talking about the chances of it flipping. And this is the first time the series will be talking about a Joe Biden flip. The previous two states, which were Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, we debated whether or not they would flip to Trump. Today we'll be talking about whether North Carolina can potentially go to Joe Biden. So, we're just going to start out this video by looking at the implications of North Carolina potentially flipping. And as you can see, it's going to give Biden a pretty substantial leg up if he were to win it. So he'd already be at 257, and from there, he'd only need one of the big states. So if you want Pennsylvania to be done, same thing with if you won Georgia, he would get to 273. And then he'd need maybe, if he won a smaller state like a Wisconsin or a Nevada, he'd get there. Or the easier path would probably be through Arizona and then taking one other state. So that's why North Carolina going blue would be huge for Biden. I am pretty confident that if Biden wins it, he's going to win the election, because if Biden wins North Carolina, he's probably winning Georgia, and from there, it's over. And even if Trump would manage to win Georgia, Biden win North Carolina, it's hard to see how he would win it but lose all these other states. So if not Georgia, he'd probably win somewhere else, and either way, let's not kid ourselves. If Biden wins North Carolina, he's probably winning Georgia, like I said. So let's take a look at the results from 2020, and we're going to kind of analyze where Biden can improve to win the state. So in 2020, he did pretty well. He did a little over 2% better than Hillary Clinton. So it was a decent swing. It wasn't a mass, like Georgia was significantly better for Biden than North Carolina was, but he has things to be happy about with his 2020 performance. The first thing you'll notice is that in the western part of the state, Biden did pretty well, especially in Buncombe County, which was right here, 7% swing towards Joe Biden. It's the only really deep blue county in the western part of the state. Obviously, he won Watauga, but Buncombe is significantly bigger and nets Democrats a lot more votes. So Buncombe is important. It's where Asheville is, kind of a university town, but it does have a lot of people outside of the university there. So to me, this is an area that could definitely improve for Biden. Sherry Beasley did pretty well here too in 2022. And since he did 7% better, I could easily see him cracking 60. And I think if he does well in Buncombe, we'll probably do well in these other smaller light red counties like, Henderson and Transylvania. They were within 20%. They could potentially narrow up to 15 points if Biden plays his cards right. So that's an area that I don't think Biden will net his, because again, he lost North Carolina by around 80,000 votes, looks like. Maybe 75,000 votes. And so he's not going to net that many votes out of this western portion solely, but maybe he can get 15 to 20% of the way there with improving in Buncombe and these counties surrounding it. But the bigger prize for him, I would say, is in the suburbs. And the most important shift towards Joe Biden in 2020 North Carolina came in Cabarrus County, which did vote for Donald Trump, but the margin was sliced in half. Clinton lost it by 20, Biden lost it by 9. So that's an interesting county. It's north, it's kind of ex-urban up here, but it does have a lot of suburbs in the southern part of it. And overall, it's a really left-trending county, like most of these suburban counties we see, kind of the Collin County of North Carolina. Obviously, Collin County, if you don't know, is in Texas. It's one of the most famous left-trending places in the country. It trended 12% towards Joe Biden in 2020. So, I would definitely say Cabarrus County is on the flip list, is considering how well Joe Biden did there. And if I'm Joe Biden, I'm targeting areas like this because they're educated and educated voters. If we look at the exit polls here, college graduates backed Biden by 18 in 2020, and in 2016, they only backed Hillary Clinton by 1. So that's a pretty substantial swing. In areas where you have a lot of college-educated voters with a 17% swing in just one election, maybe you don't get another 17-point swing, maybe you get a 12% swing. And that's enough to flip counties like Cabarrus County because, again, very educated, high concentrations of voters who are affluent. That, to me, is an area where Biden can do very well. Another area where I think Biden can do pretty well is the Research Triangle. That's Greensboro, Durham, and Raleigh. Some of these are university areas like Durham. That's where Duke University is. And, again, this combined metro, it's not really one metro, but combined, it's a pretty big area. Wake County, that's where Raleigh is, netted Biden well over 150,000 votes. Greensboro, the county that's in Guilford County, 70,000, and then in Durham, he netted over 100,000 as well. So those are pretty important areas. They're pretty Democratic leaning, and they did trend left. Wake County, 6%, Guilford, 3%. apologize if I'm butchering that pronunciation. Someone told me on my Pennsylvania video that I was like really bad at pronouncing counties in Pennsylvania. I never thought I was that bad, but hopefully I'm not doing the same for North Carolina. But either way, these counties did trend left, all of them. They're pretty urban. They are going to net Democrats a lot of votes. And again, these are educated areas. These are areas where Democrats do have room to improve. It's not like I'm looking at a county. I'm saying, well, look, this area can maybe get 5% bluer, even though it's not educated, very, very white, swung towards Trump in 2020. No, these areas trended left and they're educated. And again, like I said, educated voters, as pointed out in these exit polls, swung 17% towards Joe Biden. So that's room for him to improve. And I'd say the last area, kind of going over to the southern part of the state, kind of underwhelming for Biden in 2020. Cumberland County, that's where Fayetteville is. It's pretty big. He, well over 140,000 votes cast in 2020. So since it's a growing area, you'd probably think it maybe hits 155, 160K in 2024. And that's an area where Biden can improve. Again, he netted 14K out of the county. Maybe he nets 20K in a best case scenario from Cumberland County. But again, it didn't trend that much to the left, and that's mostly because Biden didn't really do too well in urban areas themselves. He did well in the suburbs, but urban areas weren't particularly impressive for him in most areas. So I would say Cumberland County, Fayetteville, potentially he can improve there, but it's less of a sure thing, or less of it even upside than Greensboro, Raleigh, or Charlotte. And then the last thing is in New Hanover County. It's kind of the bellwether of North Carolina. Biden won it in 2020, but it did vote for Trump in 2016. Although it is pretty left trending, it did swing 6% to the left in 2020. Although what I will say is that it's pretty good at predicting who wins national elections. Like in 2016, obviously got Trump right, then it went to Biden. And even though Biden didn't win the state, it did correctly predict the outcome of the national elections. We also saw Sherry Beasley narrowly carry it in 2022, and she didn't win her Senate race, but I guess Democrats did win the Senate as a whole, and they did pretty well nationally, so kind of worth watching. But that's kind of the upside for Joe Biden. Now, the opposite for him is that there are areas in North Carolina that are not good for Democrats, and the best example of that is probably up here. This is kind of a more rural area. It's predominantly black, which is 5 votes Democratic, but it is predominantly rural, and it did swing to the right in 2020 by a pretty considerable amount. You look at some of these deeper blue counties up here, they all move towards Joe Biden, or they all move towards Donald Trump. For example, Northampton 5.5, Halifax another 5.5, Warren nearly 7, Hartford 3.5. So I would definitely say this is a region of concern for Democrats. The good news is it's not as big, and it doesn't net as many votes to either party as the Research Triangle or as Charlotte, but it's still a pretty important area. And if Democrats are going to want to win North Carolina, they're going to have to do pretty well here. So that's a problem for Biden. Another one is down here. This was competitive territory a while ago. Kind of moved towards Republicans since then. But as you can see, a lot of these counties are pretty close. And Trump actually flipped, I believe, not Richmond, Scotland County, which he won by 2 but lost by over 5% in 2016. So these areas in the southern part of the state, again, pretty right trending. And they're not as big, like kind of same thing as these northern counties. These areas are not as big and they don't cast as many votes, but they're still important. And North Carolina is really close. If Biden's going to win, he's going to win it by a very narrow amount. And if he does that, he'll need to do well in the areas I highlighted that I think he can do well, but he'll also have to, really do damage control in these areas. Even though they're small, they're still important in a state as close as North Carolina. So that's kind of the surface level stuff. I do want to just briefly look at exit polls for a little longer here. So something I noticed when I was looking through these before I recorded the video is that mail voters are pretty friendly to Democrats in the state. They backed Trump by 9, but in 2016, as you can see here, they were very, significantly more Republican. Trump won them by 18% in 2016, and they, again, swung to Biden by a pretty considerable amount, even though he didn't win them. So I don't know too much about that. I'm not great at analyzing gender demographics because it's less straightforward than race or education. And it could also be a polling error. They said here the male share of the electorate declined by 2%. So that could be a weird thing. But if men in North Carolina are left trending, I think that's helpful for Joe Biden, obviously. And then the last thing I want to talk about here briefly is income. In 2020, Trump did carry voters who made 100K or more by a little over 5%. But as you can see here, income in 2016, he won them by 22. So these demographics in North Carolina, income and education are pretty favorable to Democrats, I would say. And the only problem they're facing, I think, really is in these areas up here. Because the rest of the state, I think, is pretty left trending. I talked about the suburbs, talk about the western part of the state, kind of in the Appalachian region. Even on the coast, these areas are pretty good for Democrats. Most of these counties did move to the left. So to me, North Carolina is a good one. It's to me pretty close. I would say Joe Biden, I'd call him a narrow underdog. He has maybe a 45% chance of winning it. But his problem is that Democrats haven't kind of broken the glass ceiling there just yet. It's a state that has looked promising for them. It's kind of appeared as if it's going to flip. Like in 2020, a lot of people had Biden winning it. I had him winning it till the last few weeks of the campaign. I held it tilt Trump on election day. I was glad I moved that because I would have been wrong if I kept it in the Biden column for as long as I did. And the Senate race there was expected to go to Democrats by a pretty decent amount. They lost it. And even if you go back to 2014, that was a red wave midterm. Democrats lost a Senate seat there. They haven't won it back since. So North Carolina is an interesting state. I'm looking forward to how it votes next year. But for now, I think Trump's the favorite, even though it is very flippable. So thanks for watching, and let me know what you want to see next. And, of course, I'll see you all in the next video.